The moving truck pulled away from 847 Maple Ridge Court on a Tuesday afternoon in late September, and I stood there watching the autumn leaves drift across my new driveway. After 15 years working undercover narcotics in the city's most dangerous neighborhoods, this quiet suburban street felt like a different planet. My captain had been clear. "Thompson, you're burned. Half the dealers in the metro area know your face. Take the reassignment or take early retirement." So here I was, Marcus Thompson, 38 years old, trading my studio apartment overlooking the interstate for a 3-bedroom colonial in Riverside Meadows, the kind of place where people actually waved to strangers and kids still rode bikes without helmets. I'd barely unlocked my front door when I heard the purposeful click of heels on pavement. She appeared like a heat-seeking missile, clipboard in hand, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my first car. Her hair was shellacked into submission, not a single strand daring to move in the September breeze. "Welcome to the neighborhood." Her voice had that particular pitch that immediately put me on edge, the same tone domestic disturbance suspects used right before things escalated. "I'm Patricia Wainwright, president of the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association. I see you're just moving in, so I wanted to personally deliver your HOA guidelines and regulations packet." She thrust a 3-ring binder toward me that must have weighed 5 pounds. I forced a smile, using the same disarming technique I'd perfected during witness interviews. "Marcus Thompson, appreciate you stopping by, Patricia." She corrected me immediately. "It's Mrs. Wainwright, actually. Now, I noticed your lawn is already a 1/4 inch over regulation height. Section 3.2, subsection B clearly states that grass must be maintained between 2.5 and 3 inches. I'll give you until Friday to address it since you're new." Before I could respond, her eyes narrowed at my motorcycle parked in the driveway. "And vehicles must be garaged overnight. Street parking is prohibited except for guests, and even then, no more than 4 hours." I glanced at the binder in my hands, feeling the weight of bureaucracy in physical form. "I'll make sure to read through everything, Mrs. Wainwright." But she wasn't finished. Her gaze swept my property with the intensity of a crime scene investigator, noting every detail. "Your mailbox needs repainting. Regulation color is colonial blue, approved by the board in 2019. Your porch light should be replaced with a fixture from our approved list, available on page 47 of your binder. And those shrubs?" She pointed at the overgrown bushes flanking my walkway. "They exceed the height variance by at least 6 inches. I'm surprised the previous owners let it get so out of hand. The Hendersons were usually so conscientious." The way she said their name suggested they'd somehow failed her too. "Did they move far?" I asked, trying to make normal conversation. Patricia's expression soured. "California. Apparently they found our community standards too restrictive." She made air quotes with perfectly manicured nails. "Some people simply don't understand what it takes to maintain property values." That first evening, I unpacked boxes in silence, occasionally glancing out my window at the pristine street. Every lawn was identical, every mailbox aligned, every driveway spotless. It was the kind of uniformity that would have made my old captain joke about Stepford suburbs, but I understood the appeal. After years of crime scenes and chaos, maybe boring was exactly what I needed. My new assignment was monitoring organized crime intelligence from a desk at the regional office, analyzing patterns, connecting dots on spreadsheets instead of street corners, the kind of work that didn't require a bulletproof vest or a backup piece strapped to your ankle, the kind of work where the most dangerous thing you encountered was carpal tunnel syndrome. I was arranging books on a shelf when my phone buzzed with a message from my lieutenant. "Thompson, we've got a situation developing. Major shipment intercepted at the port, but we're getting chatter about a distribution network operating in suburban areas. Need you to keep your eyes open in that neighborhood of yours. Could be nothing, but the intel mentions Riverside area specifically." My pulse quickened with the familiar rush of active investigation. I texted back, "What am I looking for?" His response came immediately. "Unknown, multiple vehicles, late-night activity, possible safe houses. Just observe and report. You're not operational, remember? You're burned." I stared at that last word, feeling the sting of it. 15 years of building cases, hundreds of arrests, and now I was sidelined because some dealer's cousin had recognized me buying coffee at a 7-Eleven. That night, I lay in my new bed, staring at unfamiliar ceiling shadows and listening to the absolute silence. No sirens, no shouting neighbors, no gunshots echoing off brick buildings. Just the occasional rustle of wind through trees and the distant bark of a dog. This was supposed to be my fresh start, my peaceful transition into the second half of my career. But as I finally drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that Patricia Wainwright's eagle-eyed surveillance might prove useful in ways she never intended. If there was criminal activity in Riverside Meadows, she'd notice it before anyone else. The question was, would she recognize it for what it was, or would her obsession with grass height and mailbox colors blind her to something far more dangerous happening right under her nose? 3 weeks into my residency at Riverside Meadows, my real work began. It started with a text message at 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. Asset arriving your location, 0200 hours. Federal witness, high value, secure perimeter, and await handler. I sat up in bed, reading the message twice. My quiet suburban house was about to become a safe house for a confidential informant in a major case. Within minutes, my phone rang with more details from Lieutenant Morrison. Marcus, this is strictly need to know. The witness is testifying in a racketeering case next week. We've had credible threats, so we're rotating locations every few nights. You'll have overnight custody, then transport arrives at 0600. Simple babysitting job. His tone suggested it was anything but simple. At 1:45 a.m., I checked my security cameras, a discreet system I'd installed my first week, hidden well enough to avoid Patricia's inspection tours. The street was dead quiet, porch lights glowing at regulation intervals. Then, at exactly 2:03 a.m., a black SUV with tinted windows rolled slowly down Maple Ridge Court, headlights off until it turned into my driveway. 2 federal marshals exited first, scanning the neighborhood with practiced efficiency. Then came a woman in her mid-30s, brunette hair tucked under a baseball cap, moving with the nervous energy of someone whose life had been turned upside down. They were inside my house within 45 seconds, and the SUV disappeared back into the night like it had never existed. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm Detective Thompson. You'll be safe here until morning. She nodded but didn't make eye contact, clutching a small overnight bag like a lifeline. The lead marshal, a thick-necked man named Kowalski, pulled me aside. She's the key witness in the Valdez organization trial. Been in protective custody for 6 months. We've had 2 attempted breaches, so we're keeping movements unpredictable. Your job is to keep her calm and keep her breathing until we extract at dawn. Any problems, you call this number immediately. He handed me a card with nothing but a phone number printed on it. What about my neighbors, I asked, thinking immediately of Patricia and her nocturnal neighborhood patrols. What neighbors see is a colleague visiting from out of town, nothing more. Kowalski's expression made it clear this conversation was over. After the marshals left, I made coffee while Rodriguez sat rigidly on my couch, staring at her phone. You want to talk about it? I offered. She looked up, eyes hollow with exhaustion. Talk about how I'm testifying against my own cousin? How my entire family has disowned me? How I can't even tell my mother where I am? Her voice cracked. I was just an accountant. I just did the books. I didn't know what Vicente was really doing until the FBI showed me the photographs, the things he'd done to people who crossed him. She trailed off, and I saw the weight of moral compromise crushing her shoulders. This was the part they never showed on crime dramas, the human cost of cooperation, the way witnesses became ghosts in their own lives. I was about to respond when my security camera alert chimed on my phone. Patricia Wainwright, dressed in a pink bathrobe and carrying a flashlight, was marching up my driveway at 2:47 a.m. You have got to be kidding me, I muttered, checking the feed. She was examining the tire tracks from the SUV, her flashlight beam sweeping across my front door. Then she pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. Rodriguez's head snapped up. What's happening? Is someone out there? Her hand instinctively went to her throat, panic flooding her features. It's just a neighbor, an overzealous HOA president. Stay here, stay quiet. I moved to the front door, intercepting Patricia before she could ring the bell. I stepped onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind me. Mrs. Wainwright, it's almost 3 a.m. She aimed her flashlight directly at my face, momentarily blinding me. Mr. Thompson, I've observed multiple vehicles arriving at your residence at highly irregular hours. My sister came to visit. She's going through a divorce and needed a place to stay for a few nights. The car was an Uber. The lie came easily, smooth as silk. Patricia's flashlight lowered slightly, but her suspicious expression didn't change. Your sister, at 2 a.m, without any luggage visible. And why would an Uber disable its headlights in a residential area? She was sharper than I'd given her credit for, her attention to detail bordering on investigative. Family emergency. She didn't want to wake the neighbors with headlights. Look, Mrs. Wainwright, I appreciate your vigilance, but everything is fine. My sister is upset and exhausted, and your flashlight is probably terrifying her right now. I put genuine frustration into my voice, hoping it would mask the lie. Patricia studied me for a long moment, her expression calculating. I'll be noting this in my incident log. If I observe additional irregular activity, I'll have no choice but to involve the police and the HOA board. We have standards in this community, Mr. Thompson, standards that exist for everyone's protection. She turned on her heel and marched back across my lawn, her flashlight beam sweeping side to side like a prison searchlight. I watched her disappear into her house 4 doors down, then checked my security feed. She was standing at her window, still watching my house. Inside, Rodriguez had moved away from the window, pressing herself against the wall. "Who was that?" she whispered. "The most dangerous kind of witness," I said quietly. "The kind who sees everything but understands nothing." The incident with Patricia should have been an isolated problem, but it became a pattern. Over the next 2 weeks, I received 4 more witness protection assignments, each involving late-night arrivals and early morning departures. A teenage hacker who'd infiltrated a cybercrime network, an accountant from a money laundering operation, a former gang member turning state's evidence. Each time, Patricia documented the activity with increasing fervor. I'd find printed notices in my mailbox, repeated violations of quiet hours, excessive vehicular traffic, suspicious individuals observed on property. She'd started a dedicated section in her neighborhood watch binder specifically about my house, complete with timestamps and photographs. Lieutenant Morrison called me on a Tuesday afternoon, his voice tight with concern. "Thompson, we've got a problem. Someone filed a police report about your address claiming suspicious criminal activity. Guess who responded to the call?" I closed my eyes, already knowing. "Local patrol." "Exactly. 2 uniforms showed up at your door this morning while you were at the office. They called it in, and now I've got the deputy chief asking why a burned undercover detective is running witnesses through a suburban safe house without proper authorization or protocol. Want to explain what the hell is going on?" I ran a hand through my hair, pacing my living room. "I'm following orders. Every placement came through official channels with proper authorization codes." The authorization was for emergency overflow, not regular rotation. "You were supposed to be a last resort option, Thompson, not a primary location, but that's not the real problem." Morrison's pause felt ominous. "The real problem is your HOA president has now filed 3 formal complaints, submitted surveillance photographs to the local precinct, and apparently has a meeting scheduled with a city councilwoman about dangerous elements infiltrating Riverside Meadows. She's making noise, Marcus, the kind of noise that draws attention we absolutely cannot afford in active investigations." I felt anger rising in my chest. "So what do you want me to do? This is my home. I'm following orders. Maybe someone should explain to Mrs. Wainwright about operational security." "We can't do that, and you know it. The moment we acknowledge official activity, we compromise the security of every witness who's passed through your location. If word gets out that there's a detective running a safe house in Riverside Meadows, every criminal organization in the metro area will be watching that neighborhood." Morrison's voice softened slightly. "Look, Marcus, I know this isn't fair. You're doing your job, and you're doing it well, but Patricia Wainwright is becoming a legitimate security risk. We need you to figure out how to handle her without exposing the operation. Use your skills. You spent 15 years talking your way into dealers' confidence. Surely you can charm one suburban busybody." But Patricia Wainwright proved resistant to charm. That evening, I found her standing in my driveway with 2 other neighbors, an elderly man named Gerald Hutchinson and a middle-aged woman named Carol Brennan. Patricia held her infamous binder, now bulging with what I assumed were her case files on my suspicious activities. I looked at their faces, Patricia's triumphant certainty, Gerald's genuine concern, Carol's fearful suspicion, and felt the walls closing in. Everything I'd worked for, every case I'd built, every witness I'd protected, was about to unravel because I couldn't maintain a lawn properly, and Patricia had too much time on her hands. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" I kept my voice level, non-threatening. Patricia opened her binder with dramatic flair. "I'm not accusing you of anything yet, but the evidence suggests several possibilities: illegal short-term rentals, drug activity, human trafficking, or involvement with organized crime. The police were notably unhelpful, which suggests either incompetence or corruption. So I'm taking this to the media. I have a contact at Channel 7 who's very interested in a story about law enforcement failing to investigate suspicious activity in a quiet suburban neighborhood." The mention of media coverage sent ice through my veins. A news crew investigating my house would blow every protocol, compromise every witness, and potentially get people killed. I had seconds to make a decision that would affect dozens of lives. "Patricia, Gerald, Carol, you're right to be concerned. You deserve answers." I paused, watching Patricia's expression shift to surprise at my admission. "I'm a police detective. I work in witness protection. The people you've seen are witnesses in active criminal investigations. They're victims and cooperators who need protection, and my house serves as a temporary safe location. I can't give you details because doing so would literally endanger lives, but I can promise you that everything happening here is legal, authorized, and in service of putting dangerous criminals behind bars." The silence that followed was deafening. Gerald's expression shifted to understanding, then respect. Carol looked relieved, her suspicions transformed into concern for the witnesses. But Patricia's face went through a different evolution: shock, anger, and then something more dangerous: vindication. "You expect us to just take your word for it? How do we know you're really a detective? How do we know these aren't criminals you're sheltering? You could be showing us a fake badge right now for all we know." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police again, and this time I'm demanding to speak with a supervisor. If you're legitimate, they'll confirm it. If you're not, I want you arrested immediately." I watched her dial, knowing that the moment she connected with a supervisor, my cover would either be blown or confirmed, and either option would end my effectiveness. In 15 years of undercover work, I'd never been exposed by someone trying to help. The irony would have been funny if the stakes weren't so high. Patricia's phone call to police dispatch that evening set off a chain reaction I couldn't stop. Within an hour, a patrol sergeant named Williams arrived, followed shortly by Lieutenant Morrison in an unmarked car, his expression dark as a thunderstorm. The gathering on my driveway had grown to include 7 neighbors, all wanting answers about the mysterious detective in their midst. Morrison pulled me aside while Williams dealt with the crowd. "This is a disaster, Thompson. Do you have any idea how many protocols you've just violated by confirming your status to civilians?" His whisper was harsh. "She was going to the media. I had to contain it. By spreading it to the entire neighborhood? Brilliant strategy." Williams addressed the crowd with practiced authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, I can confirm that Mr. Thompson is indeed a law enforcement officer conducting authorized activities. However, the nature of his work is confidential, and I'm going to need all of you to sign non-disclosure agreements acknowledging that sharing information about his residence or activities could compromise ongoing investigations and endanger lives." He produced a stack of official forms, and I watched the neighbors' expressions shift as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't neighborhood drama anymore. This was federal witness protection, criminal investigations, real danger. Gerald signed immediately, his hand shaking slightly. Carol followed, apologizing profusely, but Patricia stood frozen, her binder clutched to her chest. "This is completely unacceptable. We were never informed that our neighborhood would become a staging ground for police operations." Morrison stepped forward, his badge visible on his belt. "Mrs. Wainwright, let me be extremely clear about the situation. Detective Thompson has been protecting witnesses who are testifying against drug cartels, human trafficking rings, and organized crime syndicates. These are organizations that murder people for cooperation. Every witness who has stayed at this location was in imminent danger. By documenting their presence, taking photographs, and filing police reports that create public records, you have potentially exposed their identities and locations. If any harm comes to these witnesses as a result of information you've documented and distributed, you could face federal charges for obstruction of justice and witness tampering." The color drained from Patricia's face. I was just trying to protect the neighborhood." "By doing what exactly?" Morrison's tone was harsh. "By taking pictures of traumatized women fleeing abusive trafficking operations? By noting the arrival times of teenagers who witnessed murders? By creating a paper trail that any defense attorney could subpoena, any corrupt cop could leak, any criminal organization could obtain?" He gestured at her binder. "That document in your hands is a roadmap to murder. I need you to surrender it immediately, along with any digital copies, photographs, or notes you've made. This isn't a request. It's a legal order under federal witness protection statutes." Patricia's eyes widened with genuine horror as the implications crashed over her. Her hands trembled as she handed over the binder, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know. I thought he was the criminal." The crowd dispersed slowly after signing the NDAs, neighbors casting new glances at my house, no longer suspicious, but something worse, afraid. They understood now that violence and danger weren't confined to distant city streets, but could reach into pristine suburban cul-de-sacs. After everyone left, Morrison and I stood in my driveway under the amber glow of streetlights. "What happens now?" I asked. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion evident. Now we audit every witness placement you've handled, cross-reference Patricia's documentation with active cases, and pray that none of the information leaked beyond this neighborhood. The U.S. Marshals Service is going to have my head for this breach. Your safe house is compromised, Thompson. We're shutting it down effective immediately. I felt the weight of failure settling on my shoulders. The witnesses I was protecting will be relocated to other facilities. Your role in witness protection is over. I'm sorry, Marcus, but the risk is too great now. Too many people know about this location. Morrison's expression softened slightly. This wasn't entirely your fault. The placement authorization shouldn't have made you a regular rotation site, but the exposure happened, and we have to deal with consequences. He headed toward his car, then turned back. One more thing. We've been monitoring communications intercepts from the Valdez organization. They've been searching for Rosa Rodriguez, your first placement, with significant resources. There's chatter about Riverside area, about a detective, about a nosy neighbor. We're not sure how much they know, but they know something. I'm putting surveillance on this street for the next 2 weeks. If you see anything unusual, you call immediately. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Morrison's words. They know something. I thought about Rosa Rodriguez, testifying in federal court next week, her entire case built on evidence she'd provided. If the Valdez organization found her, she'd disappear like dozens of other witnesses who'd been silenced before trial. I thought about Patricia, whose dedication to community standards had inadvertently created a security breach. I thought about all the rules and regulations, the grass height measurements and mailbox colors, and how none of it mattered when real danger came calling. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and made coffee, standing at my kitchen window watching the empty street. That's when I saw it. A dark sedan, lights off, rolling slowly past my house. It paused for just a moment, long enough for me to see 2 figures inside, long enough for the passenger to raise what looked like a camera or phone toward my windows. Then it accelerated smoothly and disappeared around the corner. I immediately texted Morrison. Suspicious vehicle surveilling residents, dark sedan, possible reconnaissance. His response came within seconds. Stay inside, back up en route, do not engage. But even as I read his message, I was already moving toward my safe, pulling out my service weapon for the first time since moving to Riverside Meadows. The quiet suburban life I'd been promised was officially over. The violence I'd spent 15 years fighting had followed me home. The backup Morrison promised arrived in unmarked cars within 12 minutes, but the dark sedan didn't return that night. What did arrive at 7:15 the next morning was Patricia Wainwright at my front door, her usual confident demeanor replaced with something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. Mr. Thompson, Detective Thompson, I need to speak with you. It's urgent. Her voice shook as she glanced over her shoulder at the street. I let her inside, noting the dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept either. There was a car outside my house last night, around 4 in the morning. 2 men got out and looked through my mailbox, my windows. Then they took pictures and left. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, the car was gone. I felt my chest tighten. They weren't just surveilling me anymore. They were targeting Patricia, probably thinking she knew something about witness locations. Did you get a description of the vehicle? She nodded, pulling out her phone with trembling hands. I took a photo from my bedroom window. I know I wasn't supposed to be documenting anything anymore, but instinct took over. The image showed the same dark sedan from my security footage, same 2 figures. But Patricia had captured something I'd missed, a partial license plate. I immediately texted it to Morrison, then looked at Patricia's frightened face. Mrs. Wainwright, I need you to listen very carefully. The men in that car are likely connected to organized crime. They're searching for witnesses I've been protecting, and they think you might have information. But I don't know anything. I turned over all my documentation. I signed the NDA. Patricia's voice rose with panic. After your lieutenant explained everything, I destroyed my digital copies, deleted my photos. I've been trying to undo the damage I caused. I could see genuine remorse in her eyes, the weight of unintended consequences crushing her typical confidence. They don't know that. To them, you're the neighborhood watchdog who documented everything. You're a potential source of information. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Patricia, I need you to pack a bag and stay with family or friends for a few days. Somewhere these people wouldn't think to look. Don't tell anyone where you're going except the police contact I'm going to give you. Her expression shifted from fear to something unexpected, determination. No, this is my neighborhood. I've lived here for 23 years, raised my children here, buried my husband from the church down the street. I'm not being driven out of my home by criminals. She straightened her spine, and I recognized the stubborn resolve that had made her such an effective HOA president. Besides, if I run, won't that make me look guilty of something? Won't it suggest I have information worth extracting? She was right, which made the situation more complicated. Then we need to make you a hard target. I'm going to have police protection placed on your house, and you're going to follow every security protocol I give you without question. No more neighborhood patrols, no more documenting activities, no more being visible. Over the next 72 hours, Riverside Meadows transformed into something resembling a crime scene. Unmarked police vehicles rotated through the street. Morrison set up a command post in my garage, monitoring communication intercepts and coordinating with federal agencies. The Valdez organization was making moves, desperate to find Rosa Rodriguez before her testimony. They'd traced connections to my address through some method we hadn't yet identified, possibly a corrupt court clerk,